Hi, my name's Bruce Gain. I'm here to talk about playing Doom in the browser. And it's symbolic more towards how you play video games in the browser, and also how the evolution of WebAssembly over the past 40 years. And I wanted to walk through that, give a bird's eye overview of that and what it means now and what it means for WebAssembly and what we can expect to see, hopefully, during the next few months, maybe, as the WASI standard component model becomes worked out. But for this talk, it's about the browser. And about me, I'm a founder of this company called RevCom. We're based in the US. It's an analyst firm. We're starting to do testing. So we're looking at doing Wasm testing from benchmarks. So that's exciting as that develops. And we do a lot of white papers. And I've been a long-time journalist, and I continue to write articles. And I've written about video games and other things for Wired, PC World, Popular Science, and Variety. And more recently, more hardcore developer-oriented platforms such as the new stack, DevOps.com, and Security Boulevard. I've been a Linux advocate since 2001, an open source advocate since roughly 2010. Okay, it's Friday. This is the last talk of the week or the conference. So if you want to play, would anybody would prefer to play video games right now than being here? Anybody? No? Okay, if you would like, feel free to play along with Doom on the browser. It's here, and you can play it. You've been able to play it for a while, for a decade, and so it's fine with me if you want to play that. So again, sorry, it's more about me. Sorry, but I thought it was relevant because I've had firsthand experience living through these periods, and I started playing Space Invaders and Asteroids in the 1970s, and I started designing very, very rudimentary games with BASIC in the 1980s, and I first played Doom in 1994, and it changed my life forever. History of WebAssembly, and it's relevant to the gaming platforms on the browser, I feel, because you had Java applets. I don't know if you remember that. In the mid, it was Sun. I think somebody here was talking about that, about how Sun Microsystems came out with this way to run scripts or code in the browser with Java 0.10, and it was a big thing. I remember when they were talking about that. And it was interesting, cut above HTML, as you know, and then there was Adobe Flash. And I was going to add this, I didn't have time, but I just remember the Spider-Man game was really cool, and I was playing, it was really neat. You could do that with Adobe Flash. And Adobe continues to do great things in WebAssembly as well, as you know. And then there was the, what I would argue is a precursor to WebAssembly for running code in the browser with the ASM.js, I know I'm mispronouncing that, for what they called the ahead-of-time compilation. And then Wasm's born. I termed it, this is my definition, a compiler on steroids. No. A lot of people would disagree. A lot of people were actually upset about that when I wrote that. And Mozilla, Microsoft, and Google, they came out with WebAssembly in 2010. And one of the hallmarks is often cited, how the WebAssembly became part of the W3C recommendation in 2019, excuse me. Then Mozilla announced WASI in 2019, and WebAssembly was 2.0 introduced in 2022. And then the WASI preview 2 developed through, of course, the Bytecode Alliance as we began to extend WebAssembly beyond the browser and into serverless and on the server and the backend, et cetera. That's exciting stuff as well. I would argue that the browser is pretty cool too. So, Wasm, again, is everywhere. Before I segue into more about gaming, this is my current status report If you think of anything else or any other examples, please let me know. Yeah, as you know, Adobe and Google, actually, that's kind of erroneous. I mean, everybody, that's kind of redundant, but Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, they're all using WebAssembly for the platform for streaming. It's in use. It's very open source oriented, and that's very prevalent. For a long time, for years, over a decade, Microsoft's been using WebAssembly for its flight simulator playing online. That was news to me. I learned that recently. And then Microsoft is extending WebAssembly so you can play it online you can put Excel and use that online with WebAssembly. And that's through their Lambda functionalities. And so I think we'll see, we're all here to see what's happening, and it's really interesting to see how this is developing more. We can do a lot of more things on the browser now. And as I saw yesterday, there's this thing called Indoor where they're talking about putting the server on a browser, if I understood correctly. So it's really exciting. We'll see what happens. But for the browser part, I think a lot of stuff is going on, in my opinion. Okay, Space Invaders. It came out in the 1990s. This is relevant. It was a milestone in gaming. These are what the consoles looked like. I think you played like a quarter, 25 cents in the United States, roughly. And that really put a new type of gaming on the map. And then you had, with the advent of WebAssembly, you had Mozilla's bringing Epic's Unreal Engine. At the time, it was Unreal Engine 3 to the web in 2013. That was a big deal. You could go, you can play this game. You still can, as far as I know. Wow. You go in the browser, you play it. You don't have to download the demo. You don't have to put it on the DVD or whatever. It's been there in the browser since 2013. That was a huge jump in browser applications running on WebAssembly. And so Doom came out. Doom. I think that's a mistake. Doom, sorry. Doom came out in 1993. Again, I'm bringing that up because it was a huge milestone in gaming. And I learned that recently that it wasn't actually the first person or 3D game, but it was something that imitated 3D graphics beyond what Wolfenstein had done previously. That's my understanding. But it exploded in popularity and became this. It put an interface that, at the very least, resembled 3D gaming and graphics at that time in 1993. And I think it's very instrumental for WebAssembly, especially for the browser, or very noteworthy because, as you probably know, John Carmack, who wrote the code, was able to condense the C code to a very amazing or compact way with a very, very comparatively very limited resources, computing resources. And that has remained exemplary of just great coding and graphics it's more of a coding hallmark. And that is interesting, I think, today because we're still with Wasm on the web, we're still dealing with low power constraints, and people have to be creative if they want to do, for video games, it requires some more programming skill, I would argue, and it should, eventually become less resource hungry, you should be able to start porting more games on there as the Wasm specs improve. But for now, it's a little tricky with, that's why you don't see very high-powered and large games on, to play on the browser these days. Some of the, going back to the Unreal Engine hallmarks, you had Tappy Chicken. Does anybody remember Tappy Chicken, 2014? Wasn't a great game, but it was kind of cool to see how Wasm worked. And then you had the Unreal Engine 4, demos for browser games. These are mostly browser games. It was discontinued. Fortnite, it's went through GeForce Now. That's the way I understand it. WebAssembly is no longer porting that. I think they went through cloud streaming. But that's where we are for web games, or an example of the Unreal Engine's evolution if we're playing the browser. And then we have Doom. Just developed by Fabian Sanglard in 2019. It's kind of cool. I've played it. Looks pretty neat. Then there's a classic Doom with the Emscripten to compile the original source code for WebAssembly, and that's what I attempted to do. More on that in a bit. And then you have the Zoom browser, GZD Doom in browser, and that works reasonably well. All these work reasonably well. Doom on web containers, Doom on threads. I wanted to here show Doom, not in the browser, but in a dishwasher, or somebody told me last night you can run it in a PDF document. Not that you'd want to do that, but I think maybe next time it would be kind of fun to do if you have nothing else to do. But as I mentioned before, for the video games, the roadblocks are the asset memory size now extending to, they are extending to 4 gigabits with 64-bit architecture, but that's still not huge. It's still a problem a bit. If you want, you're not going to play like Overwatch even, or you're not going to play the newest games on the browser at this time. But I think that can change. That's just my theory. But what's happening now is, which I learned recently, is that we're seeing PC games in the browser take off a bit. I wouldn't call this a renaissance, but a lot of games are being launched on the browser at this time. And and they, how do you describe it? You're getting a lot more and more retro games in addition to Doom that you can play in the browser. And in addition to, there's Fly Peter. I thought I had that file. You just put your name in there and you start playing, join game. Supposedly this was created with a bot, and he's making $50,000 a month. I read that. And but that's just one example. It looks it's kind of a cool game. It's not, in my opinion. I haven't played it actually, but the graphics look reasonably good. And what we're seeing, though, interestingly, is that on a macro level, we're seeing growth. And I learned this recently, of PC games played on the browser. And we're seeing, there's a huge, a lot of upheaval in the video gaming space now, with a lot of in the market pressures, et cetera. And it looks like, according to this new Zoom analyst firm, that console games are these huge hits, multi-million-dollar productions such as Call of Duty. They're stagnating as far as sales go. And mobile continue to grow marginally or steadily. But we're seeing an uptick in PC games, or games played in the browser. And this is interesting. So I think that there is I guess, a niche market, but I want to say niche market. But this analyst firm also said that 98% of all people playing video games are playing on older video games. So you can argue that maybe at least the majority of games now that have been released can be played in the browser, and they can be distributed with WebAssembly. I would wonder why they would not use WebAssembly to do that. So here's the example of the Fly Peter game. And I'm hoping, what happens with Doom, it's, right now the best way to do that is to put it on the browser, which I attempted to do, and I did actually, but it got buggy. But it's with Emscripten chocolate Doom, and you take it and you just compile the chocolate Doom into Emscripten, and it pops up in your browser and you play. I was really amazed. So it worked reasonably well, and then it didn't work anymore. I guess you could call this kind of a failed demo. Here's chocolate Doom. Just loaded it, played it, put it on my browser. Really cool. If you like Doom, if you haven't guessed, I love Doom. Still do. And then I got into the, it didn't come out correctly. I got into the browser, I forget what you call it, the editor there was a file missing in order to compile chocolate Doom through Emscripten, and there was a repeat of a certain file, and I had to go into the editor, the GUI editor, and it just didn't behave. So I was stuck here. But I did. You can still. I mean, if I had compiled it, it would look. had I compiled it, and I just deleted it. There we go. Sorry. So had I compiled it, it would have just, and as I did it before, please believe me, but it just pops up on the screen on your browser, and it's fast. I mean, even with the game I just showed you, which was written by a bot or artificial intelligence, you just click and bam, it's amazing. I mean, it's for users. I think when users use it, they become amazed, and that's actually how I learned how to use WebAssembly. I figured it out. Somebody explained it to me, and I got it, I guess, kind of intellectually, but not really. And then it was actually Colin Murphy from Adobe. He said that with WebAssembly, you can run Adobe applications in the browser now with a WebAssembly. It's like, okay, I got it. And then you can then extend it elsewhere now with the WASI standard and component model outside of the browser. And so had the demo worked, it would have popped up and could have started playing Doom multiplayer. That's it. Any questions?
More than questions, I mean, it brings back memories to see Doom. But I think what you mentioned about the Fly Peter thing, I think it's, to me at least, it's very interesting to see WebAssembly used for this kind of backend projects, because you can create a game and you can just publish it, right? Right now, most people who do casual gaming, you do it in your phone.
Yeah.
So you have to go through Apple, or you have to go through Google. So I don't know. We'll see where this goes. But I don't know if you have any thoughts about WebAssembly kind of enabling these, kind of simple games, but also a lot more people who would
Yeah, I mean, that's, you're bypassing the whole app stores and everything. You just, there are forums, I would imagine, where you publish the game. You just give the link and you play it. And as far as distribution goes, yeah. Why would you not do that? That's what I would have thought. But again, the memory, you can't do all the games like that. Even maybe a Call of Duty, maybe a demo. But as far as gameplay goes, yeah, I think, and as that market report indicated, there is a growing demand and a growing number of games ported or distributed that way online, played on the browser, these indie games, and the retro games. Anybody else? Yeah.
More of a comment rather than a question.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe do you know about Godot engine?
Unreal Engine?
Godot. It's a free. Yeah, it's spelled G-O-D-O-T.
Geo?
G-O-D-O-T. So it's a free open
Godot.
source game engine.
Oh, yeah?
And you can export directly to WebAssembly. You don't even realize it. You just select, like, you can select Windows, Linux, or WebAssembly. And it will generate all the files that you need. And you can run your games no problem.
So is it like Emscripten, or is it?
It uses a script, and that's fine.
Okay,
It does like it does all of the heavy lifting for you. Then I took care of.
so it's easier.
Yeah, definitely easier.
Okay.
Yeah, that's-
Well, thanks.
Yeah, I was going to get so this is a game that I wrote like 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah?
With Godot, at a very simple level, and that's running on Chromium. So you can see that it's very easy.
Cool.
It's rather easy.
You want to give up and give the demo? You can do it. Right.
I recommend it.
But that's cool. Yeah, that's great.
It's very similar to Unity in some way.
I'm sorry?
It's not like a free and open source competitor to Unity and Unreal.
Yeah, okay.
It's very interesting option.
Cool, I'll check it out. Thank you. No other questions? Okay, we're all good. Have fun. You're free to go.